A powerful witch leader was reincarnated in the body of a little girl, determined to finish what she started. In 1945, in Willow Creek, Montana, a baby named Alara was born with a strange dark spiral on her palm. At first, everything seemed normal until she turned 5. That's when the dreams began. Flames on her skin, voices screaming for her death. She woke up gasping, choking on smoke that wasn't there. By 10, it got worse. She spoke a dead language. She sketched a lost village that hadn't existed for 300 years. Historians were horrified. It was Velsher, where 13 witches burned at the stake. At 18, her visions became real. In the mirror, she saw a woman burned, furious, the leader of the Velsher Coven, and her magic was so powerful that even death couldn't stop her. At night, she heard whispers, "Finish what we started." Then, in 1970, a fire broke out at Kent State University. Witnesses saw a young woman watching the flames, smiling. The lesson, if any can be learned from the nightmare she carried, is unsettling. Some evils don't die in fire. They are reborn through it. And sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't summoned by rituals. They are simply waiting for their next lifetime to arrive. Patient and unstoppable. Because destiny doesn't always choose the innocent. Sometimes it chooses the one who burned last.
You ever have that one friend who wakes up grumpy and says they feel like a different person today? Well, imagine if they actually were, because that's basically what happened to Alara. And before you roll your eyes and say, "Yeah, right," let me ask you something that might stick in the back of your mind for the rest of the night. What if the reason some places burn, fall, or fracture in history isn't human error at all, but someone quietly finishing an ancient task they began centuries ago? Because as Alara grew older and the spiral on her palm deepened into something that looked far too deliberate to be a birthmark, she slowly realized the world had been waiting, terrified, for her return. And the more she fought it, the more the fire clawed at the edges of her dreams, until it seeped into her waking life like smoke slipping under a locked door. Alara's beginning wasn't extraordinary, just Willow Creek in 1945, a quiet Montana town where people worried about crops, cows, and the occasional drunk man falling into the river. But her backstory was soaked in something darker than anyone expected. Because long before she was a child with scraped knees and pigtails, she had been Velsher Coven, the ruthless leader of the Velsher Coven, a woman whose magic didn't bend nature, but broke it, and whose death by burning didn't cleanse the world of her, only scattered her into the waiting womb of the next century. And the catalyst for her awakening was subtle at first. A nightmare here, a whisper there, then a moment when she accidentally said goodnight to her mother in a tongue no human had spoken since the 1600s. A language historians believed only existed in fragments carved into charred stones from the ruins of Velsher itself. Most people don't know that Willow Creek sits on a fault line, not the kind that moves the earth, but the kind that cracks the veil between worlds when the conditions are right. So the surprise isn't that Alara was reincarnated there, it's that she almost grew up normal, until the day she turned 10 and drew the old Velsher settlement with such frightening accuracy that a visiting historian fainted dead on the living room rug. And her parents tried to explain it away, saying children have vivid imaginations. But even they couldn't deny the way doors jammed shut around her, or how flames flickered at the tips of candles when she passed, or how animals backed away from her like she was a walking shadow. The history of the burned coven wasn't just tragic. It was intentionally erased, buried under the weight of fear, because the 13 witches of Velsher weren't harmless village healers. They were architects of rituals powerful enough to twist fate. And Velsher Coven, the one Alara used to be, had crafted a ritual that would reshape the future. But she died before completing it, and the world thought that was the end. But as decades passed and Alara approached adulthood, The weight of unfinished magic pressed against her like a hand on her spine, guiding her toward the moment it had been waiting for since 1670. The spiral on her palm darkened each year like a countdown. And the big scares weren't loud. They were quiet, creeping things. Reflections lagging behind her movements. Shadows stretching toward her. Mirrors fogging over with smoke even when the room was cold. And the pacing of these horrors seemed almost intentional, as if something wanted her to acclimate to them rather than fear them, because it needed her to accept her role before it fully reclaimed her. And the more she resisted, the more the layers of fear built around her, until even the simplest silence felt like a breath held by something unseen. The midpoint of her life. The part where the line between Alara and Velsher began to dissolve happened the night she saw the burned woman in the mirror, a creature with blistered skin, melted lips, and eyes like open wounds. And instead of screaming, Alara felt recognition, deep and bitter, like remembering a promise she wished she hadn't made. And that moment triggered the crisis that would define her destiny. Because once she saw Velsher, the visions no longer stayed in her mind. They stepped out into the world. The scent of burning hair, the echo of chanting voices, the scorched footprints on her bedroom floor. What was at risk wasn't just Alara's sanity, it was the safety of every place she touched, since Velsher's spirit was hunting for the site where her ritual had been interrupted, and the rising tension followed her through the late 60s as historical cases of spontaneous fires.
Whoa, still here? You're braver than most. Didn't even flinch, huh? Well then, before the shadows start whispering again, don't forget to press that subscribe button and ring the bell so you'll never miss the next descent into darkness. And hey, a like and a comment might just keep the spirits calm for tonight. Your support helps us bring more tales from the other side, so sleep tight if ye still can. Good day to all of ye. Now, back to the nightmare.
Unexplained heat waves and missing persons lined up perfectly with Alara's whereabouts, though nobody at the time connected the pattern. Because who would believe a quiet, soft-spoken girl could carry the wrath of an entire coven inside her? The realization hit Alara the night she dreamed of Velsher, not as a ruin, but as it once was. A thriving village hiding a chamber beneath its chapel, where the coven forged a pact meant to ignite through every generation until the world finally bent to their will. And she woke, knowing death had never been the end, only a pause. And the whispers that crawled around her bed every night begged her to finish what they started, to fulfill the covenant carved into her previous soul. Recent encounters only grew more terrifying. Classmates burned by touching her notebooks, a teacher whose breath turned to smoke after scolding her, entire forests near her home scorched overnight without a spark or storm. And every time Alara felt guilt or fear, Velsher's reflection smiled back at her as though pleased by her suffering. Then came the ending. The world remembers as a tragedy, but never understood. The 1970 Kent State fire, officially blamed on electrical faults, but witnesses swore they saw a young woman standing at the scene as the building erupted in flames, her expression calm, almost relieved, like someone crossing the final step of a long, punishing journey. And though Alara vanished into the chaos and was never seen again, survivors reported smelling burnt sage and hearing faint chanting echoing through the smoke.
Thanks for watching. Hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves a good scare. Every tap and share helps us bring ye more terrifying true stories, disturbing encounters, and chillin' mysteries. Tales designed to keep ye up at night. This is Dark Hour Diaries, where your nightmares find a voice. Arr!